This meeting is being recorded.
Hello, everyone. This is That Weems Guy here for another episode. We're recording this Wednesday evening, April the 5th at 8:04 Eastern Time. And we have a selection of people who attended TacCon. Last week's episode had three presenters from TacCon on it, including myself, and Mark Freaky and Rob Garrett interviewed us about TacCon, and then we got into some other topics. But a listener said they would love to hear from regular Joe attendees or Jane attendees, as the case may be, who went, that weren't there as presenters. They were there as attendees, students. We got some range staff here as well. People that were RSOs as well as attending. What was their perspective? And so I posted in the TacCon group on Facebook, and you have to be enrolled in TacCon to be in the TacCon group in Facebook. Hey, if you'd like to be on the show, sound off on this thread. And I tried to pick a cross selection of veterans and first timers and the like. And so we're going to go around with the introductions now. First up, Monique.
Hey, I'm Monique Clark. I am a second-time TacCon attendee. I'm active duty military. I'm in the Marine Corps. I retire here very shortly in about a year, 3 months and 27 days, but no one's counting, right? I live currently in Quantico, Virginia. I have two boys. I'm the founder of Lioness Defense Firearms Training out here. So I do training as well, one-on-ones, concealed carry, gateway instruction, whatever you can think of. But great to be here. TacCon definitely opened my eyes the first year, which was last year that I went, and this will be a very interesting discussion.
What do you do in the Marine Corps, if you're allowed to say?
Oh, I'm a logistics. I'm a logistics chief for my regiment.
Okay. All right. You also served as an RSO, correct?
Not this year.
Not that you did last year.
Though, right? I helped Akil, like I helped him out a little bit, but no, I didn't serve as an RSO this year.
All right, Dakota.
Hi, my name is Dakota Adelphia. This was my first TacCon. So I am the San Diego chapter facilitator for Girl and a Gun. And I also have my own training company. So I do concealed carry permits for the County of San Diego and private lessons and a few different things. But I had heard all about TacCon, heard it was a great time. I had some people here in my local community who go every year, and they really encouraged me to try it out. And this last year, I went through the Range Master Instructor course with Tom Gibbons, and so kind of met a little bit about the culture of Range Master and really enjoyed it. So I was happy to be there.
All right, we had the first internet squirrel / slimy thing of the night. What's the process to become a concealed carry instructor in California?
So in California, basically, you have to have a COE, so certificate of eligibility, and you also have to go through this process where you get certified by your county sheriff. So in San Diego County, they open the list every 2 years for new applicants to be instructors, and then you apply. You go through this process where you submit your, certifications, you prove that you have the experience required, and then that's basically it. They tell you if you passed or not. You have your certificate of eligibility, your background check, all of that, and then you are on the list for 2 years, and then you can renew every 2 years after that.
Is there a list of pre-approved instructor certifications that you must have to get that?
Yes, there's a basic NRA cert that is accepted, and then you have to have an additional certification. So personal protection in the home is one of them. They also had me submit an additional accreditation because they weren't sure about one of the certifications I had. So I also submitted my Range Master one to count towards those certifications, and they accepted it.
Yeah, I was amused. I was looking through the North Carolina requirements here recently, and like USCCA and NRA instructor, the basic instructor was accepted, but like the FLETC 80-hour instructor certification wasn't. I just thought I was amused by that. But do the people who apply and complete the training? Do they have much trouble getting their license? What's the process there?
Yeah, so San Diego County has been pretty CCW friendly for the last 6, 8, 10 years, something like that. So the process was you had to have good cause, but the sheriff was essentially allowing any good cause to get a permit. So you could say that you worked in an environment where you could be the victim of theft or something like that. So most people could kind of write their good cause statement in a way that would allow them to be accepted. The main problem with the process right now, which we're actively working to fix, is the long wait time. So after the Bruin, the good cause statement was removed and everybody thought, oh, this makes it way easier. So everyone went to get their CCWs. So we have thousands in the queue, and it takes about a year from the date of applying to the date of receiving your permit. The process is pretty simple, but you apply, you show proof of residency, all those things, and then they basically set you up for an appointment at the sheriff's office, which right now is, anywhere between 10 months and a year away from the day you apply due to the backlog. And then at that appointment, you get fingerprinted, you go through the background check through the DOJ, and about 90 days later, they tell you that you passed your background check. Then you have to go to my class or someone like me and do an 8-hour certification class where you have a written exam and a shooting qualification, and then they mail you your permit.
Hmm. And you don't have to do that for any other constitutionally enumerated right.
Nope.
Matt, can you imagine people having to do all that to exercise their Fourth Amendment right against search and seizure? Have you had your background check and have you completed your class to say, no, I do not consent to this search?
Unreal.
Martin.
Well, good evening, everybody. Sure happy to see all you guys again. A little introduction about me. I spent 43 years as an airline pilot, and that's why I got to be the weatherman that Friday morning. Spent a lot of time in and out of weather that I probably should not have been into, and thinking, well, maybe this might have been a mistake, but it all worked out well. Started with Tom Givens about 15 years ago. I had no idea about Rangemaster or who Tom Givens was. I just happened to find Rangemaster in the Yellow Pages. Yeah, Yellow Pages were around 15 years ago. So, just like a lot of newbies, you don't know how to act. You don't know how to talk. Is there a certain walk? Is there a wave? They kind of took me under their wing and taught me everything I needed to know. And I've done 12, maybe 15 tack-ons, mostly as just a chair setter upper and nothing real important. About 10 years ago, when we left Rangemaster, Tom asked me to be the match director, and that was a big step. As we continue to grow, we've had to change the personnel and change our duties and job descriptions, and just to make it better for everyone else. Right now, I'm working at a range in Memphis called Top Gun. I do mostly private lessons. I've done about 54 already this year, and I've taught 4 classes and taken 3 myself. So it's been a busy year.
And you assumed a new function at TacCon this year. You went from being the match director to being over or in charge of all the operation, right?
That's correct. Program director. Just kind of another set of eyes, see what's going on, see who needs help, what I can do to make it better to help myself.
All right. Tammy?
I'm Tammy Bartles. I live in Tonganoxie, Kansas, which is a little town about 20 miles west of Kansas City on the Kansas side of the state line. I recently parted ways with a large range here in the Midwest. I was their director of training for 2 years, and they got some new ownership, and we had different feelings about instructing and what that looked like or what that should look like. So I'm currently job hunting for a full-time gig. I have my degree in marketing, so I'm looking kind of that way. and working on some contract stuff with some local ranges so that I can do private lessons and small classes. Like Dakota, I'm the facilitator for our local A Girl and a Gun chapter. So that's a lot of fun. And next weekend, I head to Indiana with Shoot Like a Girl for my tryout with them to be one of their contract instructors. So lots of really cool, fun training stuff going on. I always joke, some people drink the Kool-Aid. I filled up a pool and jumped right in. So
There you go. We were in the process of working out that range hosting me coming out there. Then I got the email, well, the range just got sold, and I don't think this is going to happen.
yeah. And you're glad you didn't go, because I had set up Tim Heron already, and he went just a couple of weeks before TacCon, and I got to hear how unwell it went. So
that's unfortunate that it didn't go well.
it is. So it's a really nice range. Tom was there end of last month or end of February doing an instructor development class. So hopefully they'll get stuff figured out.
Yeah. And social media mogul, Matt Lanfair.
I don't know about that. Maybe I spent a little bit too much time on the internet. That's what it is. Matt Lanfair, cop for a while. Most of my training background has been either department provided or somehow law enforcement, military centric, where most of the students are there against their will. So that's fun. If it's not that, it's the kind of training where for some reason people are wearing plate carriers when they might not need to yet, or training where you do want to wear a plate carrier because there might be live guns going off in close proximity. This was my first TacCon, and it was such a nice change of pace. And I think I had the same conversation multiple times with people talking about how, having been through so much law enforcement training, so much of this were, again, the students are hostages, people that want to actually be there. And the atmosphere was just so pleasant. And after the first day, I was messaging people left and right saying, next year, you're going with me, whether you like it or not. And overall, such a positive, everything was positive, except for the humidity. As someone that's living in the desert, in the mountains, getting off the plane and getting literally hit in the face. Okay, not getting hit in the face with the humidity. Yeah.
And that was not a
that.
humid day, Matt.
No, it wasn't. So I grew up in a suburb of Chicago, and yeah, humidity is, I'm used to it, but having been away from it for so long, and then, oh gosh, geez, this is warm. And not bringing the proper clothing. I should have had more short sleeves and stuff, but that's my own deficiency.
Yeah, I was out in your neck of the woods a couple of years ago, and it was 95 degrees with 9% humidity.
Yeah.
It was unreal.
It's awesome. Air conditioning actually does something for you.
I actually signed up for a class one time because it was 96 degrees and like 85-90% humidity where I live. And the class was 75 degrees and 25% humidity. And I said, that's the one qualification that I need. I'm going. Hold on. Tammy, this was your second TacCon? Was that correct?
Yes. Yeah, I forgot to say it was my second.
All right. Monique, did you say this was your second as well?
Correct.
Dakota, what?
Her first.
This one was my first.
First. Okay. All right. I've been every year since 14. So we missed, what was it, 20 or 21 we missed, Martin?
21.
21 because of COVID. All right. I know everyone's anxious about when will the tickets come out and everything for 24. That process is underway. I know that the Dallas Pistol Club has to take a vote as to whether or not we come back this year and everything else, and that's all pretty much. I think I don't want to say it's a rubber stamp thing because I don't want to offend anyone and anything with that. But my understanding is it's pretty well a done deal. Wayne Dobbs is the president of the DPC, and outstanding facility, just outstanding facility. They do an excellent job of hosting us. And my first TacCon was in the old Rangemaster facility in Memphis. Then for 2 years, we were at the Memphis Police Academy. Then we were at Darcy for 2 years. Then we were in New Orleans on a racetrack for a year. and then we've been in Dallas ever since. Martin, were you at any of the Tulsa TacCons?
No, I never made the Tulsa. I did make the one we had up in Marty Hayes' place at
Yeah, the
Firearms
regional.
Academy of Seattle.
Yeah, I was at that one as well. Interestingly enough, we did that one year. We were going to do it as an every other thing. It was called the Northwest Regional TacCon, and didn't get enough registrations to do it the second time. Who knows? You know, who can guess? But back to the tickets. I know everyone's anxious for them all to come out and sign up. There were a lot of people who normally come that weren't there this year because TacCon normally sells out Octoberish, Novemberish. It sold out in 3 days this past year. We were 60% first time attendees.
Wow.
And so that's, you know, it was sad that I didn't get to see a lot of familiar faces that I see every year at TacCon, but it was also great to have new people there as well. And before we get into the round robin thing, I just want to talk to Martin about the match stuff real quick and what happened Friday morning. We got hit with a deluge Friday morning.
Yeah, it wasn't so much the water. As you know, I trained with you when it was snowing. So
In Tennessee in April.
that's right. So that doesn't really bother me. It's the lightning that really concerned me. And as most of you know, you can be hit by lightning 21 miles from the center of the cell. That's why you don't want to be out, and when there's lightning available for you, you don't want to have a golf club or things like guns that are made out of metal in your hand. It's just not a good mix. So it was put on my shoulders to make a decision, and I always err on the side of caution, as I did for 43 years, flying you nice people all over the world. If you can't do it safe, you can't do it at all. And I run the range up at Top Gun the same way. It's got to be done safe.
Yeah, and I watched the storms and everything coming in. I know there were people like, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? It's like, there's nothing you can do.
No.
We're going to sit here and we're going to wait for this to blow over and then we'll get started.
Yeah, it's just not worth the hazard is not worth going out on a range just to fill a class.
All right, because you know we can dry water off, but we can't dry a lightning strike off.
Right.
Speaking of the match, Monique, did you shoot it?
I
Yeah,
did.
you did because you were in the finals, weren't you?
Yes, I was.
Dakota, you were also in the finals.
Yes.
I know you shot it. Tammy, did you shoot it?
I did not shoot it. I had an arm injury.
Okay. Matt, did you shoot the match?
I didn't. I'm a wuss.
Martin, did you shoot it?
The staff gets together and shoots it. I do not fill out paperwork on mine. Simply for the fact that I don't want anybody to say, well, you've had the course of fire for 2 months and you got the practice and you knew exactly what these turning targets would do. It's an unfair advantage. So I do not enter the match.
Okay. I did shoot the match this year, but I stunk it up and did not make the finals this year. Interesting thing, there was a discussion in the Facebook group where someone kind of put forth the idea that the only reason people don't shoot the match is because they're scared to do so. And I take umbrage with that. I really do. My first TacCon was 2014. I had my assigned shooting time for the match was at the same time as a class I really wanted to take. And I was like, I can go shoot a match near my house. I can't go to this class near my house. So I didn't want to give up the class spot to go shoot the match. Same thing happened in 2015. There was a class I really wanted at the same time as my assigned shooting time, so I didn't shoot the match in 15. In 16, I was walking down the hallway and some guy that looks remarkably like Martin grabbed me and drugged me into the range and said, "You're shooting the match." It's like, well, I guess I'm shooting the match right now. And shot it then. One of the years in Dallas, I think the first year we were there, I didn't shoot it because Tom asked me to teach revolver. And by the time I put all of my revolver gear and everything in my luggage and everything to get out there, it was jam packed and I just had no room for anything else. And I'm like, well, I just won't shoot the match this year. You know, I can understand people not wanting to give up classes to shoot the match. All right, Matt, I see you nodding your head. You got any comments?
Absolutely. So for me, very similar to what you just said about having a match nearby, but you can't go to these classes. I purposely didn't take a single shooting class. I just want to go to all the lectures. Logistically, also, yeah, you can travel with guns, ammo's there, but it's just more of a hassle when I have a lot of shooting classes under my belt. I'm not saying I'm done doing them, but some of these lectures, yeah, these are from some people that I greatly respect, and I put a priority on these lectures versus a shooting class. If I want to go to a shooting class, I'm going to go to something where I have the entire meal and not just a little hors d'oeuvre or a snack, because that's essentially what the shooting blocks are. They're giving you kind of a highlight of the thing, but you're not getting the entire experience. And so I'd much rather dedicate that time to sitting in a cool lecture, and they were great.
Yeah.
I really, really enjoyed them.
Yeah. Monique, any thoughts on the match?
I was tempted not to do the match myself as well. I had some downtime to where I wasn't able to shoot the 2 or 3 weeks prior. I wasn't able to get to the range. So I was like, I am going to fudge this up. I am not going in there embarrassing myself. But when I told Aki, I was like, I don't think I'm gonna shoot it. He was like, you're gonna shoot it. I was like, all right, cool. I shot it anyway. And it went well. I didn't expect I was gonna place where I did, because I shot the match the first year and I was like bottom 10. So I was like, okay, anything better than that, right? That should be good. But over the last year or so that I've been shooting consistently, obviously it retained. So it went pretty well.
All right, Dakota.
Yeah, you're kind of similar concern about live fire classes overlapping with the match time, but I had somebody from San Diego who's been to a few TacCons tell me that a lot of people don't shoot the match, so you could show up kind of anytime and there's a chance that an empty spot will be there. So I was like, I'm just going to do that. So I went on Saturday and hung out until there was spot for me on one of the volleys and shot it at not my assigned time. I don't know if I'm supposed to say that, but it worked out great for me. Sorry, Martin, if that causes problems.
I'm going to address that very thing here shortly.
So I may have broke the rules, but it worked out for me because I was able to shoot the match. And I think there is always that fear of embarrassment or whatever, but something that for me, personally, that I like to try to do is just compete against myself. So, not thinking about who else is on this line, who do I want to, not embarrass myself in front of, but, just showing up and shooting the best that I can in that moment. And being happy with that as long as I accomplished that. And I felt good with that and went for it.
I'm going to skip Martin. I'll come back to you just a second, Martin. Tammy.
Okay.
So I didn't shoot it last year either on my first year. And I think last year, and we talked about it in that post in the Facebook group a little bit, is I didn't really know what it was. And I drove down from Kansas with Chuck Haggard, and I wasn't just some loner who had no connections, and I still didn't know really what it was. I didn't understand what the match was, what the purpose of it was that for me, was it for and so I do think we could be better about putting out some information, especially for new people, about what that is to make them more comfortable and feel a little better about it. I was super bummed because I was going to shoot it this year, and then I am 5 foot tall and I drive a Jeep and pulled my elbow 2 months ago climbing into it and hadn't been shooting a lot. So I did not want to miss out on my live fire classes by, wearing out my arm where I couldn't shoot anymore by shooting the match. So next year.
All right, Martin, you have the floor to anything you need to say about match and range operations.
Well, if you can imagine how this thing's grown over the 20 years that I've, a lot of you have been involved with. The first few years, we were lucky to get 20 people to come in and shoot the match, and we didn't have a shoot off back then.
Yeah.
So 20 people over 3 days is really not all that busy. Yeah. So Tom always put out times for your scheduled time to shoot the match. as we continued to grow, people wanted to go to classes, and I understood that. But if I've got a spot on the line and it's empty, it belongs to you. You just show up. You may have to wait a little bit. Now, I may have to do the carpet dance in Tom's office here by saying this, but I promise we will get you on the line. And it's something you need to do is get the word out. As newbies, tell everybody that just show up. Well, they may have to wait a little bit, but we'll get them. I understand the apprehension. If you could imagine when I first got hired by Tom at Rangemaster, going in on instructor night and shooting against 35 of the top shooters of the nation, my heart was pounding. I understand the apprehension, but I stuck with it, and here I am today. We don't care. I get people from the very top, and we have that shoot off for the very, very best, but we want everybody. I want that person who just bought the gun yesterday and it's still in the box, doesn't know what to do with it. I want that person that is scared to death. Many people come up just to watch. I said, "You ready to shoot?" And they go, "No, I'm not qualified to do this." We walk up to the berm and we will have a quick little class with them. They're welcome to sit there and watch the other shooters and get used to it. If they've never presented a gun from a holster, we will let them shoot the match from the ready position. And of course, we won't count it, but it gives them exposure. I would rather have them shoot the match, not get all the shots off, than to have wild shots just because they're under the time. So it's my job as an educator, and believe me, the guys working that match are some of the best trained Rangemaster instructors you are going to meet. And I absolutely believe it. But yes, you will get a time to shoot next year. If you want to go to a class, just make time, but show up ready. A lot of people show up. Can I shoot the match? Yeah, come on, let's go. Oh, I got to go back to my car and get my gun. Well, then you're not ready. So if you show up ready, I'll let you know how many rounds you need, and we'll just jump right in and have a good time. I want everybody to have a good time. That's the whole purpose. Like I said, 20 people, maybe 15, 20 years ago. This year, we had 204 in 2 days. And we didn't get started for 2.5 hours. Yeah. Because after the storm went away, we got a short in the electrical system. So I was still down for another 30 to 45 minutes. So yeah, spread the word. And, you know, if you meet somebody that's nervous, say, "Hey, I'll go over there with you." And that is that support that they get means a lot to them, believe me.
Yeah, and I know when it was at the Rangemaster facility and at the Memphis Police Academy, it was a one at a time thing.
Yes.
You went through one at a time as a shooter and everything. When we moved to Darcy, that's when we opened it up and we started having like the standards match and everything. And it was, I think, the second year we were at Darcy's when we went to the tie-breaking shoot-off.
That is correct. Yes.
And you know, when Tom said we were going to do the top 16 men and the top 8 women and everything, well, that year there was some pressure. Yeah. It was like, all right, I got to make the finals this year. Yeah. And that was year 2, Martin, where the target company sent the wrong targets. Yep. And we didn't realize it till we were you were setting up the range, and like the scoring there was huge, and we had like 27 ties for first place after the standards. Right. And so we shot the 5-yard roundup on turning targets for the tiebreaker. And that was pins and needles there for a little bit.
Well, having that shoot off is also the downside of that is people think that this match is just for the very, very best shooters, and it is not. I want every single shooter that attends TacCon to come in, have a good time, and need be, have a little education.
Mm-hmm. And I would encourage people, and don't get intimidated by the shoot off and where you finish. There is a lot of turnover from year to year. Last year I made the finals and was high low man. I was 54th this year. You know, there is such a tight match. Anything can happen. Gabe White is a past winner. I've seen him twice not make the finals. You know, so you may, you know, come in middle of the pack, lower end this year. Next year, the angels may be on your shoulders guiding your bullets. and you know, you may jump up there at the top because it's that tight of a match. And you know, working on those butterflies in an environment where you're not going to get hurt is a good place to work on them.
Absolutely.
It's a good place to work on. Do any of you have any questions for Martin about the match or the range administration before we start moving on? All right. Monique, what classes did you attend?
I took mouse mindset. I did Masad Ayub's class. I did.
Let's describe the classes as saying like mouse mindset, because some of our
So-
listeners may not know what the descriptions were.
Right. So mouse mindset was the minigun class. So carrying small guns, right?
And that was Chuck Hager?
Darrow, no, that was Boki.
Okay.
He spoke, he did some history on the guns themselves and why small guns were a thing historically. And then he went over what the pros and cons were of carrying small guns. Masad Ayub's class about historical cases of self-defense. He does an amazing job with those classes every time. So I'm intending on going to one of his full-length classes when he's closer to Virginia. And there was a couple of them that I went to. My memory fails me a lot. But I went to mostly lecture classes this year. Last year, I went to all firing classes, so I probably can't even rattle them off right now to you. But I did. I went to a lot of lectures, and I got a lot of information that otherwise wouldn't have gotten if I had went again to fire the whole time, which is why I minimized the amount of live fire that I did this year. I did 2 live fire classes. One was Jedi's, and the other one was shot calling and throttle control. That was the other class that I did. Both amazing classes.
That was Tim Herron, right?
Tim Herron, yes. And both great classes. Jedlinski's class was my first red dot class. So I did that one on purpose because I'm just starting to get into the red dot. And from what I understand, he's the best, one of the best in the game for that. So I did take his class. He definitely taught me a lot of different things, especially about my grip. So as I've came back and went back to the range, I've started shifting a little bit on how I grip my gun and engage. So I'm working on little things that I've learned at TacCon, which is extremely helpful because you don't know what you don't know. You know, even as firearms instructors, we have to remain students to the craft. So getting all this other information and applying small chunks at a time, because you can't absorb all of that information and try to change everything all at once. You have to take it in small chunks. So I take it and I apply certain things, and if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. I take it and run with it, or I don't. But yeah, it was great. The amount of classes, the variety of classes that I was able to go to this year.
Can you think of anything else from your classes? So you said Jedlinski, Tim Herron's class, the mouse guns with bulky.
Right. I went to like 4 other classes. And I can't remember them. I can put them up on my phone while y'all are talking to the other panelists.
Okay. All right. Well, Dakota's going to bail you out while she talks about hers. Right
Okay.
Yeah. As soon as I heard you ask her that question, I pulled up my cheat sheet. So I've got it on my phone right here. I'm definitely going to cheat. My first class was with Gabe White. I had never trained with him. He was kind of one of my bucket list trainers. I wanted to take one of his classes, and it did not disappoint. I got nervous with the lightning. It was my Friday morning class. I was like, please, not this one, but worked out great. We ended up getting on the range right on time, and it was a phenomenal class. I think some of the ways that he manages a line of shooters is so unique and different than what I've seen from any other instructor. And it feels so very controlled. And that's a great thing to feel when you're on a line of a bunch of people holding guns. So I definitely, kind of took some tidbits from that I'm going to implement in the classes that I teach. But really great class We did some work on shoot, no shoot, and practicing drawing to the low ready, which I think is a very underutilized skill set in most firearms training. You know, most classes you draw the gun and you press the trigger, and this class you had to think, you had to do different things. He has you drop something from your hand and then go for your gun, and just really unique, and I really enjoyed that one. And then I attended one other live fire class on Sunday with Jeff Gonzalez. It was diagnostics at 25 yards. And that one was really fun. I am a fan of like accuracy shooting. That's kind of a fun thing for me. And so I really enjoyed that class. The way that he gave individualized feedback to each student was awesome to watch. And I took like 3 pages of notes in that class. He's just a wealth of knowledge. And then the rest of the weekend, I did lectures. So I went to Ed Monk's lecture on active killers. That was, you know, kind of heartbreaking to sit in that class and listen to and watch videos and see the statistics, but very eye-opening as far as what, as a country, as, you know, gun owners, what we need to be encouraging people to do, especially and people in power at school systems and churches and things like that. It was crazy to see how wrong we're getting just about everything when it comes to active shooter response in schools. And so tough subject matter, but very well worth the time if you have the opportunity to train with him. I took a Kubaton class from Greg Elfritz. That one was really interesting and painful. He has everyone in the class do this painful thing to your wrist. So the next day my wrist was like this tall. But really interesting, and, you know, touched on pressure points and different ways you could really put some hurting on somebody. So that was kind of fun. And then I did the aftermath lecture with you, Lee, and John and Eric. Very interesting, phenomenal class. Once again, kind of a tough subject matter, but very important, and something that is overlooked all too often in this kind of training. And then Masad Ayub's class, I had trained with him in Detroit last year for his deadly force instructor, and just thought he was so funny and just a wealth of information, and was really excited to take another one of his classes. And then the last thing I did was Craig Douglas. So he had his I forget what he calls it, experiential learning lab or something. And so he asked everybody in the crowd, you know, who had never trained with him. And I raised my hand, and then he's like, okay, you're in the scenario. And I was like, what did I just get myself into? I had never shot a sim gun, and they were like, oh, you know, it's going to hurt if you get hit. I was like, dang it. It's like, I know I'm shooting in the finals tomorrow. I don't want to get hit in my hand or something and have bruised knuckles. So I was pretty nervous waiting for my turn, but it was a great experience. I definitely recommend it. You should raise your hand if you're ever in the crowd in that class.
You know, Gabe White sort of sprung onto the scene a couple of years ago after he shot a perfect score at Rogers. At the time, he and Manny Bragg became numbers 4 and 5 to do it. They did it at the same time. And, you know, all of a sudden Gabe's class explodes. And here's this new guy. Well, the thing is, Gabe's actually been teaching for decades, but he was doing it all locally. And then all of a sudden he got some national prominence and recognition, and he starts teaching all over the country. You made an excellent point of how he runs a line. There is no disorganization in his class whatsoever. If it is, it's because someone's actively trying to be disorganized. And, you know, as far as Craig's stuff, yeah, you definitely get a chance to work on your butterflies in that class and learn some things about you. I've done the full-on ECQC, so I've never jumped in the experiential learning lab, but yeah, it can get intimidating, but I'd rather get intimidated when I know I'm going to walk away
Right.
than not. Martin, were you able to jump in any classes this year?
Yeah, actually, I got one this year. I went to Tiffany and Ox teaching new students
Mhm.
lecture, which you can always pick something up. Yeah, I thought it was an excellent class.
Mhm. You're so busy, ruling over your dominion that you don't get a chance to jump into classes most years.
Now, quite often I get in one and then my phone starts buzzing and I got to get up and go put a fire out. And so it's first time you leave your phone on and it goes off in a class, so you get that
Yeah.
stink eye from the instructor. It's probably not a good idea to go back in there.
Yeah, because my assigned shooting time was actually 8 a.m. Friday morning this year. And of course,
Oh,
there's no way in the world that was going to happen because of the thunder and the lightning and the rain. And so I went down with
right.
you. Well, we set up the range at about 10 o'clock or
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, we
We
got it
put up
ready
a,
to go, but then the electronics blew the fuses out and popped
yeah.
circuit breakers, and it was kind of a mess down there.
Yeah, I think something got set in a puddle of water, or a puddle of water, a mast on where something was sitting would be more accurate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not as bad as New Orleans, though.
Oh man. In New Orleans, New Orleans is a swamp. It's below sea level. And folks, we got a torrential downpour and there was standing water in one of the bays. And there just happened to be an excavator sitting nearby. And one of the attendees runs an earth moving company. And he drug a drainage ditch and with this excavator and drained the range so we could use it, but it was still sludge. And I had to bury a pair of jeans at sea after that match because I got mud on them, and that New Orleans mud wouldn't wash off. Tammy.
So, oh goodness, my first class was, well, my lecture classes, I did the Masada class, like everyone. I did Greg Ellifritz's small impact weapons class. Yeah, my arms were just like rock hard and bruised for days afterwards. It was very reminiscent of UCQC. And then I did, oh goodness, I did the chess clubs, our favorite research studies, which I'm a nerd too. So I loved that. Lots of really cool studies and information. I did the blue gun part of Chuck Haggard's close quarters class, did the Chris Fry's progressive folding knife class, which I had wanted to take last year, and then I talked myself out of it. And that was really amazing. I have a good friend who is basically an EWA junkie. And I was like, I get it now, Kristen. It was a lot of fun. And I got to knife fight Vicky Farnham, which is not something everyone gets to say. And that was pretty cool. So I love that. And then my live fire classes, I did one-handed shooting with Tim Herron. I was in the class where he was about 20 minutes late to arrive. So that was a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun at his expense for that. You could just hear him over the phone when Amy Langdon called him and it's like, where you at, sweetie? It was fantastic. So it was worth it. And then Friday morning, I actually had Wayne Dobbs's trigger control class, which was really good. Bummed it started late, but of course, lightning's no joke. It was really good. What I love, you mentioned earlier, the shooting classes is kind of like a little taste test. And I've done quite a bit of training, and Wayne probably wasn't on my list of people that I was like, I have to train with this person. But after that class, I'm like, I have to train with this person. So that's one of the things I do love about the shooting classes, because it gives you an opportunity to maybe taste test somebody that you wouldn't want to, or that you wouldn't normally be like, that's a class I have to take. So
There you go. Wayne is a phenomenal instructor.
Yeah,
absolutely phenomenal and underrated. He doesn't get a lot of the internet glamour like some of the other guys out there do, but very, very, very just outstanding instructor. I wasn't going to mention the Tim Herron thing, but since you mentioned Tim, I have to tell this. He pulled up and got all his stuff out of his car real quick, and Ryan McCann said, I'll go move your car for you. Well, folks, if you don't know Tim and Ryan, they're both short. like extremely short. And so Ryan moves Tim's car, and I see Ryan like a couple of minutes after that, and his face is just nothing but pure, absolute joy and glee. And he comes running up to me. He's like, Lee, I moved Tim Heron's car. It's the first time in 20 years I've gotten into a car that wasn't mine and I didn't have to move the seat. He was just so excited and ran off. And that was to me worth the whole trip right there, just to see Ryan that excited about stuff. What would have been funnier is to watch Matt Lamfair get into Tim's car and try to move it.
That wouldn't work.
All right, Matt, what all did you take?
So in choosing the courses to take or the blocks to take, I kind of had the advantage where I already know a lot of the people that are teaching. I have a good understanding of what a lot of the content is. Most likely, if I haven't already had a podcast episode where we spent 10 hours dissecting their perspective. Yeah. I took the aftermath, which was very good. As a matter of fact, that inspired me. There's going to be a podcast episode about some of the concepts, some of the topics discussed there. Great discussion. One of the things about it also that I appreciated was it was discussing the aftermath of deadly force encounters from different perspectives, and it was real. It wasn't, nothing was glamorous, nothing was open and shut. There was a lot of it was real life. So that was outstanding. Attended the evolution of low light techniques, and for me, I love anything low light, and Tom was teaching that, and that was really cool because he was touching on things I'm familiar with, but not like the older stuff I know, and I've shot the various techniques, but some of the input he provided kind of helped me understand it a little better, where he was talking about Harry's and leg placement. I thought that's cool, because that's something I can turn around and help officers or whoever wants to use that method. Let's see here. And then John Hearn's, I think it was the Crime and Criminals. That one for me was especially pertinent because one of the main points I pulled from that was how universal crime reporting is not necessarily accurate. And as a police officer, that's kind of something. And the reason is because there's so many crimes that are not reported. And then he provides the other two sources. And you see this graph of, okay, this is what UCR is saying, and this is what these other sources are saying. That's how many crimes are occurring. And so I came back and presented that to my brass. They appreciated that. What was also really fun was during that, I kept on texting my dad. Oh, you're going to love this, because he does UCR type stuff, dissemination with Dallas Police Department. So he gets their crime stats and he disseminates them to the public, essentially, whoever signs up for this newsletter. So that was a really interesting thing to learn about. Let's see here.
Let's talk about that crime class for a second. John occasionally does a webinar on that. It's like a 2 or 3 hour presentation on the crime and criminals. Here's the thing, folks. The Constitution of the United States of America in Article 1, Section 8 gives the federal government 18 specific powers. The 10th Amendment to the Constitution says that the federal government's power is limited to that list in Article 1, Section 8. So the federal government is not all powerful, really does not have direct authority to order the states to do anything. The supremacy clause of the Constitution only applies to the enumerated powers. That's the things in Article 1, Section 8. And it's like coining money, post office, Army and Navy kind of things. So they don't have a stick approach. In other words, they can't force state and local governments to do many things. But what they have is a carrot approach. They tie grant money and highway funding and school funding, Department of Education. Like the Department of Education has no authority over your public school system at all. no authority over universities and colleges and everything like that. They only have a carrot approach.
Yeah.
It's all tied to funding, which is voluntary. And your state or local government has to comply with certain things in order to get grant money.
Yeah.
But they can say, we don't want the grant money. We don't have to comply with the strings. Several years ago, the George W. Bush No Child Left Behind thing. States don't have to comply with that. They just don't get their matching federal education money. The federal government did not have the authority to order states to adopt a 0.08 per se blood alcohol content for DUI. But if they don't do that, they don't get their state highway money.
Mm-hmm.
You don't get money for vests and all this other kind of stuff if you don't report
Radios.
your crime stats.
Yeah.
If you don't want to apply for any federal grants, you don't have to report your crime stats. So probably about 50% of the agencies out there, just a guesstimation, are actually reporting crimes. Then there is a manipulation in that data that gets reported. For instance, if you have an armed robbery with 4 victims, does that get reported as 4 armed robberies, or 1 armed robbery with 4 victims as 1 incident of armed robbery? I am familiar with one agency that if there was a theft by taking from an office or a residence hall on a campus, that if it wasn't from a locked room with forced entry, it was reported as a theft by taking and not a burglary.
Hmm.
You know, all that stuff can get manipulated.
Yeah.
And not necessarily wrongly, maliciously, but there can be some, you know, they're checking boxes. And I actually did the crime reporting for an agency where I started at one point in time. I did the stats. It's making sausage. It really is. Matt, you got anything on that? That won't get you in trouble with your admin?
No. And so I was in charge of it for a bit, and just before NIBRS started, and I was so glad to be done with it when NIBRS came about. And that's just another crime reporting thing.
Yeah.
But when you're working with agencies and the funding just isn't there for things that officers need or agencies need, that carrot can be incredibly appealing.
You don't see it as much on the smaller counties and cities level, but when you see big cities where the chiefs move from big city to big city on contracts, if they come in and they can manipulate data in a way that won't be easily discovered, and they can show like a 4% crime rate in their first 2 years on the job, then they get the chance to renegotiate their contract or get hired by the next bigger city and everything else, because crime went down under my administration. And it may not necessarily be the law enforcement itself. It may be the city administration, the mayor or the city council puts pressure on for the books to be cooked so that we don't, we don't want our city to look more dangerous than it is, or I want it to look like I've been tough on crime and things have been fixed. And John paints a really good picture of what's going on with that.
Absolutely.
By like you say, going through some other sources. And here's a scary thought. How many missing persons or dead bodies that haven't been discovered yet?
Yeah.
So when you look at the murder rate for your area and then aggravated assault, which is really an attempted murder that we saved them medically, or
it can be
through other means. As the late William April used to say, aggravated assault is a murder that went wide right. Look at your missing person stats for your area as well.
And also with that in mind, how many of those, I can't even think of the way to describe that, missing persons where maybe someone's not paying attention. Old guy, no one's paying any attention to at all. And you know what? Something happened to him and no one ever paid any attention. And yeah. Things that fall under the radar.
Yeah. Oh, and with that cheery thought, Matt, what else did you take?
Oh, home invasions. So what I really liked about that And so I've responded.
It's not a
to all of them.
how-to guide, people.
It's not a how-to. It's not a how-to. Prevention and response.
Yeah.
So having responded to all kinds of burglaries and provided lectures and presentations to neighborhoods about, okay, this is what we want to do to reduce some of the burglaries and all that kind of stuff. It just reinforced some of my positions and provided some really cool information that I can help with my community. So next time and we just had some awesome auto burgs, so that's awesome.
Yeah.
Using the information he provided, I can turn around and present that to the public and say, you might want to lock your doors. Actually, I've always said that, but that was the bottom line with Tom's presentation. Lock
You
your
just
doors.
prompted another thought that goes back to our previous point when you said auto burglaries.
Yeah.
In Georgia, we call that an entering auto.
Oh,
That's what the crime is called. Well, a few years ago, the state changed the crime definition of burglary. For years, we had burglary, then they changed, we have burglary, now we have burglary 2 as well. And so it's still burglary if, someone enters a residence with the intent to steal or commit a felony. But if they enter a tool shed or something like that, now that's a burglary 2, where previously it was a burglary. Well, they included in that definition of burglary 2, basically the same definition as entering auto. But the penalty for burglary 2 was higher than the penalty for entering auto. And I'm going to confess to something that I did right here to that topic. One of our investigators, well-meaning, well-intentioned, started charging people with burglary 2 that we call for entering auto, because there was a stiffer penalty for
yeah.
burglary 2. We had a contended election come up at around the same time, and the other side jumps on us because our burglary stats have gone up. The number of burglaries hasn't changed, but just the reporting of those, instead of charging them as entering autos, charging them as burglaries, now it looked like the rate of burglaries is increasing. And I had to go to that investigator. Like, look, I appreciate what you're trying to do. Stop it.
Yeah.
Go back. Those are entering autos.
Yeah.
And because I didn't want it to be used as a tool to beat us with.
Yeah.
What else, man?
Last one, which was that also is going, it inspired me to get these two people on one of my upcoming episodes for the podcast, and it's the lost art of teaching beginners. And the thing that I liked about it, and I had this conversation with multiple people, teaching cops is so tiresome because there's this weird expectation that everyone's going to perform at this level, which they don't.
Right.
Whereas if I'm teaching someone that there's no background, there may be newbies there, but they're not military law enforcement, we can start from the very foundation and establish some good concepts, establish that foundation. And that is so appealing to teach people that want to be there, as opposed to, it's raining, do we really need to be out here? Can we please stop? I already shot. God.
They're prisoners, not students.
Yeah. So yeah, that class was awesome.
Yeah, that was Tiffany and Nikhil, right?
Yeah.
I have the fun task going on right now as I do our training program for jailers that are going to go to the academy. Well, we have a deputy, and we recently hired his sister as a jailer, and she's next in line to go to the academy. So I'm training her right now, and I am already just salivating at the opportunity that she outshoots him. That is my
That's
goal.
real.
I've told her that it's like, you have to outshoot your brother. It just has to happen. And she's listening, she's paying attention. So I think we're going to accomplish it, because he doesn't listen. The first year I went to TacCon, there's just so much, the smorgasbord, like all the classes going on at one time, everything's, how do you choose? And so each year I try to pick a theme. Now, some years just not capable, possible to do that. The first year I picked the theme of, I want to go to every class that deals with establishing a training program, so I could come away with, a specific set of information. So I'd like to kind of go around, how did you pick the classes that you attended? Monique?
So I picked most of my classes based off of where I felt that I had the most bias or that I needed more work on. I picked mouse mindset because I have biases against small guns. And when teaching beginners and teaching students, half of them are going to come with a small gun, and you're going to be like, really? What husband, boyfriend, storekeeper told you that this little pink 380 was going to be the best option for you? So to get out of my own way and to have a better approach to the guns, right? I don't tell that to my students, but I definitely eye roll in the back of my head without them seeing, that I'm better able to speak to them about working around the gun, right? Because we don't know what their pockets look like. We don't know why that particular gun they felt fit them. They already have the gun, right? So just being able to talk to them about that instead of approaching it more heavy-handed, and I'm like, all right, you need to go get you a new gun. No, we're going to work with the gun that you have, and you'll process of elimination, probably go get a different gun when you're done with it, but still being able to give them the proper information for that. And then picking the other classes was more like, okay, what are my deficiencies as an instructor? What do I feel like I could learn more about? And that was one of the reasons that I had picked Preparing for Lethal Encounters and Rage Success by John Holshin. That class was amazing, by the way. I don't know how I forgot about his, but it was on my top 2 classes that I took about engagement and target analysis, the stop and go, the red light, green light. I took it from John Murphy last year. He had that in his class as well, and he did a great job. John Holshin's was on a whole different level. His class was super structured. He made everything really easy to understand. He went over UDA, which is, orient, observe, decide, act. And then he talked about the whole making scenarios, right? Making scenarios and having options for those scenarios in the event that you come into a deadly encounter. The class itself was just amazing. So I picked them strategically so that I can be better of an instructor for the students when I teach them the same.
Yeah, Holshin is one of my favorite guys in this business. He's one of those people that you learn when he asks you a question.
Yes.
And I every chance I get to converse with him, I jump on. We have bestowed a special title on him, but I don't know if we're ready to announce that yet.
No.
Because that'll probably be something that comes up at next year's TacCon.
Very well.
All right. Yeah, you piqued my interest when you said the bias things. Okay, where are we going with this? And then think about that though, is we have, it's hard enough to get people to get over the hurdle and come to training as it is. And then if they walk in and the first thing we say is, hey, your gun sucks.
Right.
Do we turn them off? Do we make them feel like, oh my gosh, I've just spent the only $300 I had on this gun.
Exactly.
And now I'm going to die because I picked the wrong gun. That's something as instructors we need to be cognizant of. And thank you for bringing that up.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I just want to throw a shameless plug in there for Tiffany and Ock's class about how to be an effective assistant instructor, because it's for anybody. You definitely should take it no matter what level of instructor you are or aren't. But something, I'll loosely paraphrase what Tiffany said, but she said something along the lines of, who do you think you are that you're going to tell somebody else that it's not an appropriate gun for them? Like, what gives you the right to even have that opinion? And it really changed the way that I thought about small guns in my classes. I'm almost embarrassed to say this, but we had a policy at our chapter that if it was your first time coming, you had to use a full-size gun. So if you didn't have one, we'd provide one for you. And just thinking of it over, the last 2 years or so and talking with some of the other leadership and stuff, we decided to remove that stipulation. And, we still make a suggestion that maybe they want to try a gun that might be better suited for their hands, but we're not forcing their hand anymore. And it's something that I think about all the time of, I just hope that there's no one out there who got so heartbroken by our tactic that they gave up shooting, or left the Second Amendment community because of a well-meaning but poorly executed policy.
I agree. It's really important that not dissing somebody's gear. In fact, I'm working on a instructor development class on training people who have experienced trauma, because I have a 13-year background in child welfare, worked with tons of people, and so many times there's like this person crying in your class, and especially people who don't have any background in that, they're like, oh my God, what do I do? And it's the not making fun of what people bring is so important. That's a big part of the class that I'm working on, is just, if somebody has experienced this horrible event and now they're like, okay, I'm going to learn to protect myself, and they show up and the instructor's like, what is that piece of junk? You can re-traumatize them. You can make them, think that it's hopeless or make it worse for them. So yeah, it's a great point. It's a really important thing that we need to work on.
Am I still allowed to make fun of the deputy that shows up with a personal rifle with a sight mark on top of it instead of the rifle we bought with an aim point on top of it? Am I still allowed to make fun of them? Okay. Martin, you teach at a range, you get a lot of first timers and newbies coming in. Anything you can add about the small gun thing?
Yeah, first of all, we have a policy. We do not gun shame at all. However, we are very clear. The people have to understand that the gun has to fit their hand. It's like shoes. If it doesn't fit, they're not going to shoot it and not enjoy it. Doing the private lessons, I've found there's so many different types of people out there, and one type of training doesn't fit all. That's why I like the private lessons over the classroom lessons. So yes, I'll demonstrate with their gun, let them shoot it. And one of my favorite guns right now for students is the PDP that Tatiana Whitlock helped design. There's some great ergonomics about that gun that really helps new shooters. Most of the people I get have been trained by Hollywood. And so you've got to untrain them without making them feel embarrassed or that, yes, they fell into the pigeonhole. But like I said, everybody is different. Everybody is different.
Yeah, Matt, that's one area that for the most part, training cops that we don't deal with, because everybody shows up with a full size service gun, and usually
For the most part.
decent, and usually a decent holster.
Yep.
Because somebody else bought it for them. If they bought it themselves, they probably showed up with a Serpa or something like that. But that is one of the differences in teaching cops and open enrollment. All right, Dakota, let's go back to you for how you picked your classes.
Yeah, I realized I forgot to mention Luann Hamblin's class about teaching women. It was phenomenal. So as far as picking classes, I just kind of looked at what classes I was taking this year and kind of tried to fill in any gaps I had. So I participate in the Girl and a Gun National Conference every year at the end of April. And so I already knew what classes I was taking at that conference. I'm going to the Mingle in May, and I have an idea what that training is like. And so I just tried to get training at TacCon that was different. I had some people who were TacCon veterans tell me, take as many lectures as possible. So I only signed up for 2 live fire classes and just kind of picked things that felt a little bit out of my comfort zone and out of my normal training. So I had never done small impact weapons. I had never done a class that was all at 25 yards, just kind of tried to pick things that were a little bit more out of the normal training environment that you might see.
All right. Martin, how did you pick the one class you were able to attend?
Just my scheduling. I had time. Plus, because I deal with a lot of brand new shooters, I wanted to hear Ak and Tiffany's approach to it, see if get a few tips.
Tammy?
So I'm selfish with my shooting classes, and when I ranked them and sent them in, I picked things based on what I wanted to work on, things that I thought would make me a better shooter, but then also those, inevitably make you a better instructor as well if you're paying attention and doing it right. So that, and then for everything else, for the classroom stuff, I try to do spread it out. So I want to do something that makes me uncomfortable physically. So this year I did the progressive folding knife. Last year I did just enough jitsu. I want to do something that I haven't done. So I haven't done a lot of small impact weapon kind of stuff. And so I did that. I always tried to take a medical class. So I didn't mention it before, but I took the TCCC for TCCC for people in a hurry with Sherman House. And that was the last class on Sunday. Got really lucky because then Caleb Causey also sat in. We got a lot of great information and a fantastic comedy routine. Which was a lot of fun. And if you like really gross pictures, he had a lot of really gross pictures. And then, yeah, and then, nerdy stuff, things that maybe get a little bit into the weeds, like the research, our favorite research studies classes, to help you just learn more about, guns and personal protection at a deeper level.
Speaking of which, that class, you remember the videos that I showed of the drill that I've been working on? I've had a chance to run 2 groups through that, and the results have been a little interesting.
Yeah.
Just to see a couple of guys jump right in and have fun with it, and a couple of people who trying to combine all of that stuff together. Basically they went to blue screen at first, and then they started picking up on it, and so I think it's going to work.
That stuff's really interesting. I love reading like the after action reports. Like I read the police after action report after Pulse. And then the shootout, the FBI shootout, that video and everything. So that's a lot of fun if you get into that kind of nerdery.
It was great the way that Tom Givens broke that down. Sorry.
Go ahead.
That's the first time I heard about the shooting, the FBI shooting, and Tom did a pretty much like an hour-and-a-half lecture on it. And that was really, really interesting. And that kind of got me into doing, like, going and watching the YouTube videos of previous shootouts. And I actually request the crime reports from my local county, and I get it every week. And I use it in my Refuse to Be a Victim classes, because I'm like, hey, like, this is the stuff that goes on every week that you're not, you don't know about. And this is why we do these classes. So that was one of the great takeaways of getting more immersed into the 2A.
If you go back several episodes, I interviewed Ed Morellis from the Miami gunfight. And so I think we went 2 hours and something on it, and lots and lots and lots of great information in there. And the internet will never change. As I posted that link around trying to promote that episode a little bit, and one place that I posted it, one of the people responded that they wondered how Ed's version stacked up to that of Paul Harrell's. I'm like, well, Ed was there, so I'm gonna go with his. All right, Matt.
And you say it just like how I say, Lee.
Yes.
So you and I, and I've had also conversations with others talking about Tom's overall program. And it's really got me thinking, man, this is something I need to look more into this. I need to start taking some of the instructor classes. But I didn't have a frame of reference as to what type of instructor Tom was. So right off the bat, if I see Tom's teaching something, I'm going to jump in because I want to see this for myself. Loved it. Absolutely loved it. There's that. There's also looking at the catalog of courses available and thinking, okay, I'm pretty well versed in that. This one I'm not as well versed. It would benefit me more to go to this other topic that I don't know that much about. Or like Hearn, you guys always talk about him, and sure, you make fun of him too. But hearing how you guys kind of, I'm going to say it out loud. You guys kind of put him on a pedestal, despite always giving him wedgies and stuff. And I want to see that also. I want to see for myself. And what a great class! And so that's basically how I figured out which ones to take. I needed to see Tom, and I got to see 2 of them, and it was great. I needed to go to classes that I wasn't overly that comfortable with the material, or I didn't know it that well. And then I had to see at least one hern. So.
All right. Okay. Last year, Hearn and I attended a class through LSU on how to become a better instructor. And they gave a definition of learning that I have really come to adopt, and I try to look as far as like, is training actually accomplishing learning, or is it filling in, just checking a box? Their definition of learning was a persisting change in a knowledge, skill, or attitude. So I want to go back around. What did you learn from your experience at TacCon? What is going to be your persisting change in your knowledge, skill, or attitude? And it's okay to say, I didn't learn anything. I just reinforced, something I already knew. Monique?
I learned a different way to teach simple concepts to make them a lot simpler than what I was making them. The way Jedlinski explained the body, how the body is set up in an X, how his grip stance, how your posture, your stance, your platform is the basis for how you maintain and manage recoil. His whole setup of stance and grip was executed perfectly. Now, again, some worked for some, it didn't work for others, but just getting the information on how to better explain those concepts was worth its money in gold.
Structure, not strength. Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, that was amazing the way he said that. So I've learned from the classes how to better explain things. I'm definitely stealing that from him. I told him that already.
It's if you give it a footnote, it's research and not plagiarism.
True story.
Anything else?
I want to invest in Holshin's machine that he used for the colors. It was a lot. It's more convenient than John Murphy's flashlights that he used last year. And then talking about having a plan, which I do talk about, but he went into so much detail and was so articulate the way he talked about having a plan prior to the actual incident, and then executing the plan in your head. So in the event that it does happen, you already have the plan. And I've heard it so many times, but every instructor teaches things differently and explain things differently. And the way he explained it resonated a lot better. So that was another thing that I took back.
Yeah. I think that light system that he has was developed by Dustin Solomon from the Building Shooters book. I think that's the one he's using.
Oh, I emailed him. So when he gets me, he's going to send me back that information.
All right. Dakota, what did you learn?
Yeah, I think the main takeaways that I had were more about running lines and teaching. With a girl and a gun and private classes, I'm teaching, between 5 and 10 times a month. And I think some of the tiny little things I picked up, I was like, wow, that is going to make my life so much easier, or I'm going to feel like so much more in control of the line. And so just some little things that Gabe White was doing. Something that Jeff Gonzalez said about trigger finger placement, I really got to see it impact people's targets in a way that I had never visually seen before. And so definitely kind of taking that nugget. And I think the Craig Douglas evolution, there's a lot of takeaways there, but just learning more about, the in between of being somebody who carries a gun to drawing the gun. Like, so much happens in those moments, and I think a lot of our range training completely removes all of those variables, and you're just on a line and you hear a beep and you draw your gun. And so kind of taking in all that information and realizing that I want to do a lot more of that kind of stuff with the girls that I'm training on a regular basis. I think it definitely for me, I felt like more changed the way that I'm going to be teaching moving forward.
It's funny that you mentioned learning about running a line. It's, the private sector instructor schools tend to focus on teaching an individual student. The
Right.
law enforcement institutional side tend to focus on running a class full of students. And there's not a lot out there where you get the opportunity to mix and meld between those two. One class that I have not taken, but someone who I trust very much, Karen Whitlock, took it and gave an excellent review of is Mike Seeklander's instructor course. Now, Mike was very prevalent in FLETC's program at one point in time. And so I'm thinking you'd probably get a private sector version of his FLETC class with that. I did a class one time last year called Instructor Camp. I don't have one scheduled this year where there's time where you spend actually running a line full of shooters. I don't know who else out there on the private sector side has something like that. I know the master instructor with Range Master, you actually start running lines of people, but
Akil and Tiffany's Gateway instructor class, they touched on it pretty good too as well. They talked about the setup, where to place certain students, left-handed, right-handed, ones that are nervous, ones who shot before. So they went into a little bit of detail in that one too as well.
Martin?
Well, one thing I like to do, because going from venue to venue, I'm fascinated by watching people. And one thing I've been fascinated by for years, even in the airline and the simulator, is watching human performance under stress. And what I see a lot on the match and in some of the classes, the same reaction that I saw in the simulator with professional pilots under stress. Everybody reacts a little bit different. My approach in the simulator was, okay, you made a mistake. I don't care about the mistake. I want to know what you're going to do about it. It's quite a learning experience. An example about some of the classes you took, probably as I get to learn my new job description and get a little bit better at it, I'll be taking some other classes. Most likely I'll focus on the classes that teach me what I'm already doing, to make sure I haven't fallen into the rabbit hole and I'm becoming that instructor that's a real pain in the ass. I want to keep learning. And then probably the following year, I'll take classes that get me out of my own comfort level. Example, a friend of mine years ago, when Tom was teaching the shotgun class, said, you need to get in Tom's shotgun class. He goes, why? It's a shotgun. You just point and shoot. I go, no, get in the class. He came out about 4 hours later, big wide-eyed. He goes, oh my God, I didn't know anything about shotguns. So that's why I wanted you to take the class. You're out of your comfort level now. So those kind of classes I like to take. I've studied under instructors that almost put you to sleep. And that's because they came very comfortable of what they're teaching. And they're not exciting the class. They put me to sleep.
Tammy, what's your learning takeaway?
So I got a couple of really good ones. I think you had mentioned how you train new people, where the first time you meet with them, it's all classroom and you don't take them out to the range at all. And that's not something that we did at the range I was working at. It was like a little quick, this blurb in the classroom, and then everyone wants to get to the range. And it was like a light bulb. I was like, wow, that's, really super smart. And that's how I'm going to do it moving forward. So that was a huge one. And then I had some downtime between classes and got to kind of sit in and observe the beginning of one of Brian Eastridge's classes. And I loved the way he did the 4 firearm safety rules. I really think he just, made it more real, as opposed to just stuff we vomit out so that we can get on to the shooting part. So I really appreciated that and thought it was great. And then I learned that I'm carrying my pocket knife in the wrong pocket. And so I'm trying to get in the habit. I put my pepper spray and then my flashlight and then my pocket knife all on my support side. And in that class, he's like, okay, we were working with dummies, but it's backwards. I can't flip it open. in my support side, if I try to flip it open, it flips into the palm of my hand, not out. So now I'm working on carrying it on strong side.
Good.
So little things like that.
Matt?
The biggest takeaway is that I want to do more range master stuff. The caliber of people, the caliber of instruction, the content. That was the big takeaway. There are a lot of tiny little takeaways that I have notes. I took notes on my phone. I was texting people constantly going, oh, this is the best. You got to go next year. Check this out. But really the overall, the biggest thing is I need to go through the instructor programs here. I think it will help me also on the professional side, professional law enforcement side. I might not be doing super basic firearms instruction on the law enforcement side. Then again, it's not a bad idea to have that in the back of my mind, how to approach things a different way, as opposed to just shout it out. This is what you're going to do. No, there are times where it's necessary to do a little bit more one-on-one, and I enjoy doing that.
Yeah.
But yeah, overall, it was just a wonderful experience that I wish I participated in long ago.
All right. When you go through the range master instructor classes, I have an important tip for you.
Yes, the 5-day.
When Tom says come to the line with all your magazines loaded and at least 30 rounds in your pocket, he means for you to come to the line with all your magazines loaded and at least 30 rounds in your pocket.
Yeah.
This is not an exaggeration.
Yep.
The most stressful
No.
part of that class for me was literally loading mags. Like someone would be shooting still and I'd be like shoving rounds in my mags. It was so stressful. He's like screaming at you that you need more mags. Like, I'm trying. So definitely have lots of mags.
After I took his instructor development course, I went and bought 15 Glock mags.
Oh yeah,
I go to his class.
that's just smart.
Oh, absolutely.
And
I
have
all
most of them
filled,
preloaded.
every single one of them. I leave 2 empty because he likes to do the malfunctions, but I didn't play games after that because I was like, this is not even funny. Like it's super stressful the first time around. But once you know if you're not shooting, you stuff in mags, you're good to go. I saved round, if you don't mind, if I wanted to add one thing.
Sure, go right ahead.
One of the biggest takeaways, and I'll say from not last year, between last year and this year, I've taken a couple of Tom's classes and also a couple of Akil and Tiffany's and running the line. And I wanted to talk about that just real quick. Being in the military, I'm used to, okay, Marines, get online. And it's like 50 Marines on the line. And you're like, okay, load your guns. Ready. This is your yard line. This is how many you're shooting. You're doing a speed reload. Ready, good to go. Right. And then we just run the line. We're conditioned to you already know what you're doing. Okay. We give you the basics, go over the safety rules. Here's your gun. Here's your ammo. Let's get to it. You can't do that with students.
Right.
That was my biggest adjustment from running 50 to 100 Marines on the line to running just 6 people and having a heart attack running 6 people. It is just a big transition, and it's super important for people in the military and people in law enforcement to understand the difference and the type of transition you have to make from teaching people that are already conditioned to do what you say and fill in the blanks to people that have no idea what you're talking about, and you have to be very specific about the instructions that you give them. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Sure. Have y'all all seen that Tom Hanks movie, A League of Their Own?
Yes.
You remember the scene where he's like, there's no crying in baseball?
There's no crying in baseball. Yeah.
My very first open enrollment class with my company, I'm giving instructions and someone just decided they needed to go get something from like back under the covered area. And they just walked off the line. And like in my mind, I'm Tom Hanks. There's no walking off the line in classes. It's just like you were just saying just then. What would happen to a Marine? What would happen to all of the Marines if one of the Marines walked off the line in the middle of a
Oh, they're getting cussed out. Let's say just say it's not going to be pretty, especially if you're in boot camp. Now, in the fleet where we're at, regular Marines are not going to do that. They're just not, because
Yeah.
they already know that's not a thing. Like,
Yeah.
you don't move off the line until you're told to move off the
Yeah.
line. But yeah.
Yeah. Everybody would get smoked and everything. Be
No.
blanket parties later on for causing it to happen and everything
Absolutely.
else.
I've seen
And
coolies or recruits get clotheslined for trying to walk off the line without being told to do so.
yeah, and you just don't get that in the in the private sector world teaching classes. They're customers. They're
Right.
not, they're under orders. They're
Right.
they're there as a customer, and it's a completely different world.
Absolutely.
Anybody got any final closing thoughts? Because we've been going about an hour and a half.
Yeah. Well, one thing I have all the guys working the match really understand is that most of the new guys have only been in a bulletproof booth inside with a bench in front of them. Now I'm putting them on a line with nothing between them and the guy next to them, and it's a bit intimidating. So that's when we will have them watch, get them comfortable by watching first. In this whole TacCon, it's kind of dynamic. I have the ability to make small changes as we go along, as we see it, but I can't change safety. I have the same safety rules for the trainers, for the staff, and for the attendees, and even Tom Givens. One level of safety. As some of you heard, I did DQ a trainer. His feelings were hurt. He was embarrassed. As he's walking away, he goes, "Yeah, I did it." Okay, so I appreciated him admitting it, but one level of safety, and it's not up for discussion. We just tap him on the shoulder, holster your gun, step off the line. And that's how I hope the other classes are run too. The last thing I want to mention is Matt brought this up also, the friendship and camaraderie that I witnessed this year that we haven't really witnessed in the past. I got to witness it firsthand. Some of you may have known I ended up in the emergency room Friday night. And that's because Monique threatened me. Actually, I didn't even notice it. Somebody pointed it out to me. My elbow was about the size of a tennis ball, and it turned out to be bursitis. And I had only known Monique for a couple of hours. And she looked at it and said, "You're going to the emergency room." Well, as you know, being a smart ass, I had to make a comment, and that's when she threatened me, said, "You're going, or I'm going to hurt you." As it
You're
turns
going
out,
to the emergency room, or you're going to need to go to the emergency room.
That's right. You're going to get there one way or another.
Yeah.
As it turns out, the hospital is across the parking lot from the hotel, so it was convenient.
Yeah.
While I was sitting in there, it's getting late at night, about midnight, and in walks Dr. Keith Harper. And I'm thinking, well, I wonder what happened to him. He just sticks his head in the door and says, "Hey, Martin, how you doing? I heard you were over here." I thought it was pretty amazing that a guy would give up his evening, precious sleep to just come over and talk to me. The good side is both of us sat in there and taught the emergency room doctor how to use pepper spray. So it was a very successful evening, and I turned her on to Wayne Dobbs for private lessons. So it was a good night, Monique. We appreciate it.
Well, thank you for going to the ER as I suggested.
Anyone else with some? Go ahead, Matt.
This is really a unique opportunity to interact with those people that you may have watched on YouTube or listened to on podcasts, and you get to see them in their natural environment, and you get to see them interact with people, and you get to interact with them directly as well. And just the caliber of people involved is just awesome. It truly just wonderful, great people. And that's one of the things, again, having the same conversation with multiple people, having been to SHOT Show, having been to NRA, having been to other conference type things, the feeling to it was different, much more pleasant, much more calm, and with a high caliber of people that I want to associate with. So that's it.
I will come at you in just a second, Dakota. Okay. Speaking of interacting with people on YouTube, I think it was on one of your podcast episodes, I got on my rant about these homestead videos on YouTube. I quit my corporate job to have a farm on 1 acre of property that I bought, whatever. And they do all this stuff and everything. Well, one of them popped up on my YouTube feed last night, and I click on it, and these, YouTubers have all been invited to a long range shooting class. And then lo and behold, who appears on the screen? None other than Eric Lund is teaching the class they all got invited to. Eric's one of my dearest friends. He's been on the show a bunch of times. He's on my Mount Rushmore, my personal training and everything. I got on the phone. You're on my YouTube with other people. What's going on here? And we had that chat. So it's just funny to see the worlds collide. Dakota?
I guess to follow up on what Matt was saying about the camaraderie, it was my first TacCon, and I recognized some people and had some familiar faces there. I work with the folks over at Filster, so I, am not going to take credit for this idea, but Sarah Hopman had a fantastic idea about a informal mentorship program for the people who are brand new to TacCon. And I wanted to mention it here because I think people who are going to go to TacCon next year will probably watch this episode. So just wanted to kind of throw that idea out there. The concept of it is that you would get a buddy, a mentee that you could kind of show the ropes, save them a seat in a lecture if you guys are in the same class, and just kind of make it a little bit more easy to meet people. I think from an outsider, everyone seems to know everybody. And so if you're not the type of person who's comfortable kind of inserting yourself in a conversation and meeting people that way, it can feel a little intimidating. And so I think, just think about it. There's something on Facebook. If you look on the TacCon23 webpage, Sarah posted something with the idea in there. So just, put that pin in your mind and think about it next year when TacCon's coming up again. And I think that would be a really fantastic way to kind of welcome people with open arms.
Yeah, I
Damon?
agree. I had actually rode back up to Kansas with someone different than I rode down with because they lived closer to me than the people I did ride with. And one of the things this person says, and I don't want to out anyone, but they said it was kind of like a retired old cop reunion. But he was a first-time attendee, and there's a lot of camaraderie. I think what Chuck told me last year is, you get to see your friends only so many times a year. And so there is a lot of that. I know I saw a lot of people at TacCon this year that I've become friends with over the years. And the same thing, you don't even have to be an instructor to do that. So I loved the idea of the mentorship and kind of bringing somebody in to maybe help that transition, because everyone's not always outgoing or really vivacious and willing to insert themselves into a conversation. So that'll help people get more comfortable. We want to grow our family.
The TacCon for 24 will be the first weekend in April of 24. The last weekend of March is when we usually have it, is Easter. So we're moving it back 1 week. There will be some changes in the instructor lineup. I'm not going to reveal who that is, not necessarily all of it's finalized. But each year Tom kind of shuffles a few people around to get some new faces in. So there will be some new presenters in 24. So look forward for that. It won't be like, well, I don't want to go back because that's all the same old people. Well, it will be a lot of the same old people, but there'll be some new ones too. And everybody, we try to get people to shuffle and teach new material each year. So, each year's conference is kind of similar to previous years, but it's also kind of different from previous years as well. And it's one of the fun things because there's 30 weekends a year that you can basically run open enrollment classes by the time you take out all the extreme weather weekends and holidays and the like. And this is the one time in the year all the traveling trainers kind of get to be together in the same spot. And so that's always kind of special to participate in that. Then you get to see people that come every year that you've met in a class 30 years ago or something like that. And so that's always fun. Anyone have any kind of event or anything coming up they need to mention? Nobody's got anything to sell? Come on. All right.
Now, if you come to
TacCon.
Kansas, hit me up. I'll buy you a drink.
All right. Matt's podcast, primary, secondary. And
There's
there's
that.
and there's 74 primary, secondary YouTube groups
At least.
and counting. At least 74. It's 74. John Hearn, Eric Gelhaus, and I, the last weekend in April is the Cognitive Conclave in Martin, Georgia. There are 4 slots remaining, just 4. So go to my webpage, firstpersonsafety.com. You can go to the upcoming events link and go to my Eventbrite page and register for that. It's the same weekend as I think the National Girl and the Gun Conference. We had to have something for other people to do. So actually, I didn't know it was that weekend when I scheduled it, but that's coming. And so that's the one big thing to push. All right, folks. We know that your most important asset is your time. Thank you for choosing to spend it with us.